Welcome back. Let's start with the single most famous act of ESG stewardship ever pulled off. The case that shows what active ownership can do at its best. In 2021, a tiny, brand new activist hedge fund called Engine Number One took on ExxonMobil, one of the largest oil companies in the world. And when I say tiny, I mean it. Engine Number One held only about 0.02% of Exxon's shares, a rounding error. Its argument wasn't primarily moral, it was financial. It argued that Exxon was mismanaging the energy transition, destroying long-term shareholder value by clinging to a fossil fuel-only strategy. It ran a formal challenge to elect new directors to Exxon's board. And here's the astonishing part. It won. With decisive support from the big index managers, BlackRock, Vanguard, and large pension funds, Engine Number One secured 3 seats on ExxonMobil's board. Think about what that means. The votes of the passive index giants decided a climate contest at an oil major, against the wishes of Exxon's own management. It was a genuine landmark. And this is the lesson I most want you to take. It showed both the power and the rarity of effective ESG stewardship. It proved the mechanism can work, but its very fame tells you how uncommon it is. If shareholder-led climate victories at oil majors were routine, this one wouldn't be legendary. It's the exception that reveals how little of this actually happens. And there's a bittersweet coda that makes the point even sharper. In the years after that famous victory, as the energy crisis pushed oil prices and Exxon's profits to record highs, and as the political wind shifted, the appetite for this kind of climate activism faded. The very managers who backed Engine Number One grew more cautious about supporting climate resolutions. So even the single greatest triumph of ESG stewardship turned out to be a high water mark rather than the start of a wave. When you study this case, admire what it proved was possible, but don't mistake it for the norm. It's a lightning strike, not the weather. Now the flip side, the case that shows the dark side of the industry. DWS is the large asset management arm of Deutsche Bank. In 2021, its own former head of sustainability publicly accused it of overstating how much ESG it actually practiced, claiming the firm's marketing ran well ahead of its real investment processes. This was not a minor complaint. In 2022, investigators raided DWS's Frankfurt offices, and the chief executive resigned. And in 2023, DWS settled with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, paying $19 million over misstatements about how it integrated ESG into its investment decisions. Let me underline why this case matters so much. It wasn't a small boutique. It was a flagship European manager owned by one of the world's biggest banks. And the charge was precisely greenwashing at the fund level, telling clients you do more ESG than you really do. The DWS case crystallized regulators' focus on exactly this problem, and it sent a chill through the entire industry. For the first time, overstating your sustainability could mean police raids, resignations, and multi-million-dollar fines. It turned greenwashing from a reputational risk into a legal one. Those 2 cases, one inspiring, one damning, set up Part C perfectly, where we ask the hard, evidence-based question. Does sustainable asset management actually work? Not does it feel good, not does it gather assets, but does it deliver on returns and on real-world impact? This is where I have to be a careful scientist with you, because the academic evidence here is genuinely sobering, and it's some of the most important material in the whole course. Let's take the return question first, since it's what most investors ask. Do ESG funds beat the market? The broad, honest answer from the evidence is no. There is no consistent, robust ESG alpha. On average, ESG funds deliver returns close to the market, neither reliably beating it nor dramatically lagging it. Now that's not nothing. ESG screening can genuinely lower certain tail risks and transition risks. You're less exposed to the company that blows up in an environmental scandal. But it is no free lunch. There's no magic outperformance hiding in the ESG label. And then there's a crucial detail that tips the scales. Sustainable funds tend to charge higher fees, than higher fees than comparable conventional funds. Think about what that combination means. If an ESG fund earns roughly the market return before fees, but charges more than a plain index fund, then after fees, the ESG investor is likely to end up with slightly less money in their pocket. So the honest case for ESG funds cannot rest on outperformance. The data just don't support that. It has to rest on the other two motives we've discussed all along: values and genuine risk management. If you're paying extra for an ESG fund, expecting it to beat the market, the evidence says you're likely to be disappointed. If you're paying extra because you want your money aligned with your values, that's a legitimate choice. But be honest with yourself about which one it is. And let me connect this back to the theory from part 8, because it's not a coincidence. Remember the equilibrium argument. If investors love green assets and bid their prices up, green should earn lower expected returns, not higher. So finance theory actually predicts that ESG funds shouldn't outperform in the long run. Mild underperformance, if anything, is the theoretically expected result, and it's the price of expressing a preference. When the data show no reliable alpha, that isn't a disappointment or a failure of the funds. It's exactly what a sensible model predicts. The people who should be surprised are the marketers who promised you could do good and beat the market at the same time. The theory and the evidence agree. Sustainable investing is, at best, roughly return neutral before fees. And you're paying for values and risk management, not for a free lunch. It gets more uncomfortable. A striking study by Raghunandan and Rajgopal in 2022 asked a deceptively simple question. Do ESG funds actually hold the responsible companies they claim to? They examined United States funds marketed as ESG and looked at what was really inside them. The findings were damning. On average, these ESG funds held portfolio companies with worse records on labor and environmental compliance than the companies held by non-ESG funds. Their holdings even had higher carbon emissions. And to complete the picture, they charged higher fees for the privilege. Read that again because it's remarkable. Funds sold as sustainable held, on average, less responsible companies than ordinary funds, while charging you more. The ESG label in this large United States sample simply did not reliably translate into more stakeholder-friendly holdings. Now, one should be careful. This is one paper focused on United States funds and particular compliance measures, and ESG means many things. But it's a serious, peer-reviewed result, and it lands a heavy blow against the assumption that ESG fund reliably means holds good companies. At minimum, it tells you, don't trust the label, look inside the fund. Here's a third piece of evidence aimed at the industry's flagship commitment. Many managers sign the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment, the PRI, as a public pledge to invest responsibly. Kim and Yoon in 2023 studied what actually happened after funds signed. Two findings stand out, and they fit a now familiar pattern. First, signing the PRI worked wonderfully as marketing. After signing, funds attracted significant new inflows. Investors rewarded the commitment with their money. But second, and devastatingly, on average, those same funds did not improve their ESG scores and did not change their proxy voting. In other words, they gathered assets on the strength of the pledge, but didn't actually change what they did. The commitment functioned as a marketing signal, a badge to attract flows, rather than a genuine change in behavior. This is greenwashing in one of its purest institutional forms. Adopt the label, collect the inflows, carry on as before. Put the last two studies together and a hard conclusion emerges. Across large samples, the ESG label and the responsibility pledge too often failed to correspond to greener holdings or greener behavior. The marketing ran ahead of the substance. Let's recap this tough video. Engine number one's victory over ExxonMobil proved that ESG stewardship can genuinely work, but its fame reveals how rare that is. The DWS scandal showed the opposite. Greenwashing at the fund level, now punished with raids and fines. And the evidence on whether ESG funds work is sobering. No reliable outperformance, higher fees, and studies by Raghunandan and Rajgopal, and Kim and Yoon, showing that ESG labels and pledges too often don't translate into greener holdings or behavior. In the next video, we dig into the deepest question of all, whether sustainable investing changes what firms actually do, and then turn to fiduciary duty and the anti-ESG backlash. See you there.